On a cold February morning in 2003, in the quiet suburban streets of Middletown Township, New Jersey, a woman left her home and never returned. Her name was Patricia Romano, 34 years old, a dental hygienist with 2 young children and a husband who worked in pharmaceutical sales. She walked out the front door at approximately 7:45 in the morning, her purse over her shoulder, her coffee mug still warm on the kitchen counter. By noon, her colleagues at the dental practice were calling her home, concerned. By evening, her husband stood in the driveway speaking with officers, his hands in his pockets, his voice steady and calm. By midnight, search teams were assembling in the parking lot of the Township Recreation Center, flashlights in hand, preparing to comb through the woods that bordered the residential development where the Romanos lived. Patricia Romano had vanished without a trace, leaving behind her car, her wallet, her children, and a question that would haunt Monmouth County for more than 2 decades. Where did she go, and why did no one see her leave? Middletown Township sits in the heart of Monmouth County, New Jersey, a sprawling suburban community of approximately 66,000 residents spread across 42 square miles of former farmland and coastal forest. In 2003, it was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's names, where children rode bicycles in cul-de-sacs until the streetlights came on, where the local diner served as an unofficial community center. The Romano family lived in a development called Woodland Estates, built in the late 1990s, where identical colonial-style homes lined streets named after trees: Maple Drive, Oak Lane, Birch Court. Their house stood at the end of Sycamore Circle, a pale yellow 2-story with black shutters and a basketball hoop mounted above the garage door. Patricia Romano, known to friends as Trish, had grown up in nearby Hazlitt, the youngest of 3 sisters. She attended Monmouth University, where she studied dental hygiene and met her future husband, Michael Romano, at a fraternity party in the spring of 1994. They married in 1997 at a church in Red Bank, honeymooned in Aruba, and settled into the kind of life that looked, from the outside, entirely unremarkable. Michael worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company based in Princeton. Trish worked 3 days a week at a dental practice in Homedale, her schedule arranged around the needs of their 2 children, Emma, age 7, and Lucas, age 4. Friends described Trish as organized, dependable, always early, never one to miss an appointment or forget a detail. The morning of February 19, 2003, began like any other. The temperature hovered around 32 degrees, cold enough that frost clung to the windshields of cars parked along Sycamore Circle. Michael Romano had left for work early, around 6:30 in the morning, his commute to Princeton requiring him to leave before the children woke. Trish got Emma ready for school, packing her lunch, braiding her hair, driving her to Bayshore Elementary 3 blocks away. She returned home at approximately 7:35, according to a neighbor who saw her pull into the driveway. Lucas was home with a mild cold, nothing serious, but Trish had decided to keep him out of preschool for the day. She had called the dental office the previous evening to let them know she would be coming in late, around 9 o'clock, after she dropped Lucas at her mother's house in Hazlitt. At 7:45, according to later reconstruction, Trish Romano walked out her front door. She was wearing dark jeans, a cream-colored sweater, and a long black winter coat. Her purse, a brown leather bag her sister would later identify, was over her shoulder. Her car keys were not in her hand. Her car, a silver Honda Accord, remained parked in the driveway. Lucas, 4 years old, was inside the house, sitting on the living room floor watching cartoons. The television was on. The front door was unlocked. No one saw her leave. At 9:15, Trish's mother called the house. No answer. At 9:40, she called again. Still no answer. At 10 o'clock, growing concerned, she drove to the house on Sycamore Circle. She found the front door unlocked, the television still playing, and Lucas asleep on the couch, a blanket pulled over him. Tricia's purse sat on the kitchen counter. Her cell phone was inside it. Her wallet, her identification, her credit cards, all there. The coffee mug she had been drinking from that morning sat beside the sink, still half full, cold to the touch. Tricia's mother called Michael at work. He left immediately, arriving home shortly after 11. By 11:30, he had called the Middletown Township Police Department to report his wife missing. Officers arrived at the house at 11:47. They walked through the rooms, noting the ordinariness of everything: dishes in the sink, toys scattered across the living room floor, a load of laundry in the dryer. Nothing appeared disturbed. Nothing appeared out of place. Trish Romano had simply vanished. By early afternoon, the investigation had begun in earnest. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking if anyone had seen Trish that morning. Most had not. One neighbor, a retired teacher named Margaret Dawson who lived 2 houses down, mentioned that she had seen Michael's car in the driveway around 8 o'clock that morning, which struck her as odd because he usually left much earlier. Another neighbor, a man who worked nights and slept during the day, said he had heard a car door slam around 7:45, but had not looked out the window. A third neighbor had seen nothing unusual at all. Search teams assembled quickly. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, volunteers from the community had gathered at the Township Recreation Center. The Middletown Police Department coordinated with the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office and the New Jersey State Police. Search dogs were brought in. Officers combed through the woods behind Woodland Estates, a dense stretch of oak and pine that extended for nearly 2 miles before opening into farmland. They searched drainage ditches, checked abandoned properties, knocked on doors at homes along Route 35. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights sweeping across the landscape as daylight faded. Tricia's family distributed flyers throughout Monmouth County. Her photograph, taken the previous summer at a family barbecue, showed a woman with shoulder-length brown hair, hazel eyes, and a warm smile. The flyers listed her height, 5 feet 6 inches, her weight, approximately 130 pounds, and what she had been wearing when last seen. The local news stations picked up the story. By the evening news broadcast, Trish Romano's disappearance was the lead story. Michael Romano appeared on camera outside his home, his face pale, his voice breaking. He said, "Please, if anyone knows anything, if anyone saw anything, please come forward. We just want her home." The search continued through the night and into the following day. Officers found nothing. No clothing, no signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. The woods yielded no clues. The roads revealed no witnesses. Trish Romano had walked out of her house on a cold February morning and disappeared as completely as if she had never existed at all. Part 2. The Investigation. The investigation into Patricia Romano's disappearance intensified over the following weeks. Detectives from the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office took the lead, working closely with Middletown Police. They conducted interviews with family members, friends, colleagues, neighbors. They examined Tricia's bank records, her phone records, her email accounts. They found nothing out of the ordinary. No large withdrawals of cash, no suspicious phone calls, no emails suggesting she had planned to leave. Her life, as documented through records and interviews, appeared stable, routine, unremarkable. Detectives interviewed Michael Romano multiple times. He was cooperative, they noted in their reports, answering every question, providing access to the family's financial records, submitting to a polygraph examination. The polygraph results were inconclusive, which meant nothing definitively, but it was a detail that would be discussed later. Michael explained his movements on the morning of February 19th in precise detail. He had left for work at 6:30, stopped at a gas station on Route 35 to fill up his tank, and arrived at his office in Princeton at approximately 8:15. His colleagues confirmed his arrival. Security footage at the office building showed him entering at 8:17. He had attended meetings throughout the day, made phone calls, sent emails. His alibi on the surface appeared solid. But there were inconsistencies. A detective named Robert Callahan, a veteran of the prosecutor's office with 23 years of experience, noted several things in his reports. First, the timeline. Michael claimed he had left home at 6:30. The gas station receipt, time-stamped at 6:52, placed him on Route 35 approximately 20 minutes after he said he left. The drive from Sycamore Circle to that particular gas station took 8 minutes. Where had Michael been for the other 12 minutes? When asked, Michael said he had driven slowly, perhaps stopped to take a phone call. His phone records showed no calls during that time. Second, the neighbor's observation. Margaret Dawson, the retired teacher, insisted she had seen Michael's car in the driveway at 8 o'clock that morning. She remembered because she had been taking out her trash, which she did every Wednesday at 8, a habit she had maintained for years. Michael's car was a black BMW sedan, distinctive in a neighborhood of minivans and sedans. She was certain of what she had seen. Michael denied returning home. He said she must have been mistaken, perhaps confused about the day or the time. Third, Michael's demeanor. Those who knew him said he seemed unusually calm. Trish's sisters, interviewed separately, both mentioned that Michael did not seem as distraught as they would have expected. He did not cry during the initial search. He did not raise his voice or show anger. He answered questions with a detached precision that struck some as odd. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves about the way he spoke about Trish in the past tense during the first week of her disappearance, as if he already knew she would not be found. Detectives examined the Romano house methodically. They found no signs of struggle, no blood evidence, no indication that anything violent had occurred inside the home. Forensic teams processed the entire house, swabbing surfaces, collecting hair and fiber samples, photographing every room. They found nothing. The car in the driveway, the silver Honda Accord, was processed as well. It was clean, recently vacuumed, the interior smelling faintly of air freshener. The odometer showed that the car had been driven approximately 9,000 miles since its last oil change 3 months earlier. Michael said he sometimes drove Trish's car when his own was being serviced. Records showed his BMW had been serviced twice in the past 6 months. The investigation expanded. Detectives interviewed Trish's colleagues at the dental practice. They all said the same thing. Trish was reliable, punctual, well-liked. She had never mentioned problems at home. She had never seemed unhappy or distressed. Her boss, a dentist named Dr. Alan Fisher, said Trish had worked for him for 6 years and had never missed a day without calling ahead. Her absence on February 19th was completely out of character. Detectives interviewed Trish's closest friends. One friend, a woman named Corinne Bradley who had known Trish since college, mentioned something during her interview that caught Detective Callahan's attention. She said that Trish had seemed quieter than usual in recent months, perhaps a bit withdrawn. When asked if Trish had mentioned any problems in her marriage, Corinne hesitated before saying that Trish had mentioned once that Michael could be controlling. She did not elaborate, and Corinne had not pressed her. It was just a comment made in passing, but it was enough to make detectives take note. They looked more closely at Michael Romano. They examined his financial records in detail. They found nothing unusual. No unexplained expenses, no large cash withdrawals, no payments that suggested he was involved in anything illicit. They examined his work records. He was a successful sales manager, well regarded by his employer, on track for a promotion. They spoke with his colleagues. All described him as professional, competent, perhaps a bit reserved but otherwise unremarkable. They examined his personal life. Michael had no criminal record, no history of domestic incidents, no previous complaints filed against him. Neighbors described him as polite, quiet, the kind of man who kept his lawn mowed and his driveway clear of snow. Some said he could be standoffish, not the type to attend neighborhood gatherings or linger for conversations, but that was hardly unusual. He was a busy professional with a family. He kept to himself. The search for Trish continued through March and into April. Dive teams searched nearby lakes and ponds. Cadaver dogs were brought back to search the woods again. Volunteers distributed flyers throughout New Jersey and into neighboring states. The case received coverage on local news stations and briefly on a national cable news program. Tips came in from across the country. Each one was followed up. Each one led nowhere. By May, the investigation had slowed. Detectives continued to work the case, but leads had dried up. Trish's family held a vigil in Middletown, releasing balloons into the sky, praying for her safe return. Michael attended with the children. He stood quietly, his hand on Emma's shoulder, his face expressionless. Reporters photographed him. Some in the community began to talk. The whispers started quietly in grocery stores and coffee shops, at school pickup and church services. People said they thought it was strange that he seemed so composed. They said they thought it was strange that his story never changed, that he never wavered in his account of that morning, that he never seemed to doubt himself or his memory. Detective Callahan never stopped watching Michael Romano. In his notes he wrote, "Subject maintains consistent narrative, too consistent, no normal variation in recall, no emotional escalation. Behavior suggests possible rehearsal. But notes and suspicions were not evidence. Without a body, without witnesses, without physical proof, the case could not move forward." By the summer of 2003, the investigation into the disappearance of Patricia Romano had gone cold. Part 3: The Silence. 3 years passed. Michael Romano remained in the house on Sycamore Circle with Emma and Lucas. He continued working, continued maintaining routines, continued living the life he had built. Trish's family visited regularly, her mother taking care of the children after school, her sisters stopping by on weekends. They watched Michael carefully. They noticed things. The way he never mentioned Trish unless asked. The way he had packed away her belongings within months of her disappearance, boxing up her clothes, her jewelry, her photographs, storing them in the attic. The way he had, by the end of the first year, removed her name from the mailbox. Emma, now 10 years old, had become quiet, withdrawn. Teachers at her school noted that she rarely spoke in class, kept to herself during recess, seemed distant even among friends. Lucas, 7, had nightmares. He woke screaming several nights a week, calling for his mother. Michael would go to his room, sit on the edge of the bed, tell him to go back to sleep. He never turned on the light. He never stayed long. Trish's mother, Alina, noticed other things. She noticed that Emma had drawn pictures, dozens of them, kept in a notebook hidden under her bed. Alina found them one afternoon while cleaning. The drawings showed stick figures, a woman lying down, a man standing over her. They were crude, childish, but they were consistent. Alina showed them to Trish's sisters. They discussed whether to bring them to the police. They decided not to, not yet. They were just drawings. Children drew strange things. It might mean nothing. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, who have felt the slow erosion of trust, the accumulation of small inconsistencies and unexplained moments, you understand the weight that settled over Trish's family during those years. They could not prove anything. They had no evidence. They had only their instincts, their observations, their growing certainty that something was terribly wrong. Michael's behavior during those years struck some as odd. He did not date. He did not socialize. He went to work, came home, took care of the children, kept the house maintained. He attended parent-teacher conferences and school events. He mowed the lawn and shoveled the driveway. He lived as if Trish had never existed, as if the past had been neatly closed and filed away. Detective Callahan had not forgotten. He kept the case file on his desk. He reviewed it periodically, looking for something he might have missed. He drove past the house on Sycamore Circle occasionally, watching from a distance. He could not let it go. He knew, the way experienced detectives sometimes know, that Michael Romano was responsible for his wife's disappearance. He simply could not prove it. In 2006, 3 years after Trish vanished, Michael announced that he was moving. He had accepted a promotion that required relocation to Pennsylvania, a position based in Philadelphia. He put the house on Sycamore Circle up for sale. Trish's family was horrified. They begged him not to take the children away. Michael was polite but firm. It was a good opportunity, he said. The children needed stability, a fresh start. He promised they could visit whenever they wanted. The house sold quickly. Michael and the children moved to a suburb outside Philadelphia in August 2006. Trish's mother and sisters visited once a month, making the drive from New Jersey, spending weekends with Emma and Lucas. The children seemed no happier in Pennsylvania than they had been in New Jersey. Emma, now 13, had become sullen, angry. Lucas, 10, was anxious, fearful. They both struggled in school. Michael enrolled them in counseling. The counselor, a woman named Dr. Sarah Mitchell, noted in her files that both children showed signs of unresolved trauma related to their mother's disappearance. She recommended family therapy. Michael attended 2 sessions and then stopped, saying his work schedule made it impossible to continue. Clears throat. By 2010, Emma was 17 years old. She had grown into a quiet, watchful young woman, tall like her mother with the same hazel eyes. She had started talking to her aunts more openly during their visits, away from Michael, in hushed conversations behind closed doors. She told them things, small things, fragments. She said she remembered the morning her mother disappeared. She said she remembered waking up early before her father left for work and hearing voices downstairs. She said she remembered hearing her mother crying. She said she remembered her father's voice, low and angry, telling her mother to be quiet. Trish's sisters listened. They asked Emma if she had told anyone this before. Emma said she had tried to tell the police years ago, but she had been 7 years old and no one had really listened. They had asked her a few questions, gentle questions, and when she had not been able to provide clear answers, they had thanked her and moved on. Now, at 17, Emma said she wanted to tell the truth. She said she had been afraid for years, afraid of her father, afraid of what might happen if she spoke. But she was almost 18. She would be leaving for college soon. She wanted justice for her mother. Trish's sister, Monica, contacted Detective Callahan. He was still with the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office, now a senior investigator. He agreed to meet with Emma. In December 2010, 7 years after her mother's disappearance, Emma Romano sat in an interview room and told her story. Part 4, The Revelation. Emma's statement, recorded on December 14, 2010, reopened the investigation into Patricia Romano's disappearance. She spoke for 2 hours, her voice steady, her memory remarkably clear for someone recounting events from 7 years prior. She said she had woken up around 6:45 on the morning of February 19, 2003. Her room was upstairs, directly above the kitchen. She had heard voices, raised voices, coming from below. She had gotten out of bed and crept to the top of the stairs. She could not see into the kitchen, but she could hear. She heard her mother say, "I can't do this anymore." She heard her father say, "You're not going anywhere." She heard her mother crying. She heard something that sounded like furniture scraping across the floor. Then silence. Emma said she had been too frightened to go downstairs. She had gone back to her room and gotten into bed, pulling the covers over her head. She heard her father's footsteps on the stairs. She heard him go into the master bedroom. She heard him moving around. She heard him go back downstairs. She heard the garage door open and close. She had gotten up again and looked out her window. She saw her father carrying something wrapped in a dark blanket to his car. The trunk was open. He placed the bundle inside, closed the trunk, and got into the car. He drove away. Emma said she had waited in her room until she heard the school bus outside. She had gotten dressed and gone to school, saying nothing to anyone. When she came home that afternoon, her grandmother was there and her mother was gone. In the days that followed, when police asked her if she had seen or heard anything, she had been too afraid to tell the truth. She had been 7 years old. She had not understood what she had witnessed. She had feared her father. She had feared that if she spoke, something terrible would happen. Detective Callahan listened to Emma's statement with the focused intensity of someone who had waited years for this moment. He asked questions, careful questions, designed to test her memory and establish credibility. He asked about details. What had her father been wearing? A dark suit, she said, the one he wore to work. What time had he left? She did not know the exact time, but it was still dark outside. What had the bundle looked like? It was large, maybe the size of a person, wrapped in a dark blanket, one she recognized from the hall closet. How had her father seemed when he returned? Calm, she said. He had seemed completely calm. The investigation resumed immediately. Detectives obtained a search warrant for Michael Romano's home in Pennsylvania. On January 7, 2011, at 6 o'clock in the morning, officers executed the warrant. Michael was home. He answered the door in his bathrobe, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as officers entered. They searched the house methodically, looking for anything that might corroborate Emma's statement. They found nothing. The house in Pennsylvania was new to Michael. He had lived there less than 5 years. Whatever had happened to Trish had happened in New Jersey, in the house on Sycamore Circle, 8 years earlier. Detectives returned to New Jersey. They located the current owners of the house on Sycamore Circle and obtained permission to search the property. Cadaver dogs were brought in again. The dogs alerted in the garage in a corner near where the cars would have been parked. Forensic teams excavated the concrete floor. Beneath the surface, in the soil underneath, they found traces of human decomposition. The traces were old, degraded, but sufficient for testing. DNA analysis would take weeks. Detectives also re-examined Michael's alibi from February 19, 2003. They pulled security footage from his office building in Princeton, footage that had been archived but never destroyed. The footage showed Michael entering the building at 8:17, as previously confirmed. But new analysis of traffic camera footage along his route revealed something investigators had missed 8 years earlier. A traffic camera on Route 1, approximately 15 miles from Michael's office, had captured an image of a black BMW sedan matching Michael's at 7:38 that morning. The timestamp placed him much closer to Middletown than he should have been if he had left home at 6:30 as he claimed. Investigators calculated the timeline. If Michael had left Middletown at 7:15 after doing something in the garage, he could have reached Route 1 by 7:38. He could have reached his office by 8:17. The timeline fit Emma's account. On February 2, 2011, Michael Romano was arrested at his home in Pennsylvania. The charges, murder. Officers read him his rights. He said nothing. His expression, witnesses later reported, remained blank, emotionless, as if he had always known this moment would come. The arrest made national news. Reporters descended on Middletown Township, interviewing neighbors, filming the house on Sycamore Circle, replaying footage of the search teams from 2003. Michael's defense attorney released a statement denying the charges and asserting his client's innocence. Tricia's family held a press conference. Her mother, now 72 years old, stood with her daughters and grandchildren and spoke through tears. She said, "We have waited 8 years for this day." Patricia was a loving mother, a devoted daughter, a kind soul. She deserves justice. The case proceeded to trial in October 2011. The prosecution's case rested heavily on Emma's testimony and the forensic evidence from the garage. Emma took the stand and recounted, once again, what she had seen and heard on the morning of February 19, 2003. She was composed, articulate, unwavering under cross-examination. The defense argued that her memory was unreliable, that she had been a young child, that she had been influenced by her family's suspicions. The jury heard expert testimony about childhood memory and trauma. They heard forensic experts explain the DNA evidence found beneath the garage floor. The defense presented Michael's alibi, his work records, the testimonies of colleagues who said he had been at work that day. They argued that the timeline did not allow for what the prosecution alleged. They argued that there was no body, no definitive proof that Patricia Romano was deceased, no evidence placing Michael at the scene of a crime. They argued reasonable doubt. The jury deliberated for 4 days. On November 3, 2011, they returned a verdict, guilty of murder in the first degree. Michael Romano showed no reaction as the verdict was read. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table before him, his face expressionless. Tricia's mother collapsed into the arms of her daughters. Emma sat in the gallery, tears streaming down her face, her hands covering her mouth. Sentencing took place 3 weeks later. The judge sentenced Michael Romano to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In his statement before sentencing, Michael spoke for the first time since his arrest. He said, "I did not harm my wife. I loved her. I will appeal this verdict." The judge responded by saying that the evidence presented at trial had demonstrated otherwise, that the jury had spoken, and that justice, though delayed, had been served. Patricia Romano's body has never been found. Investigators believe Michael disposed of her remains somewhere between Middletown and Princeton on the morning of February 19, 2003, during the unaccounted-for time in his alibi. Searches of wooded areas and bodies of water along Route 1 and the surrounding areas have yielded nothing. Tricia's family held a memorial service in 2012, placing a headstone in a cemetery in Hazlitt, a marker for a woman whose final resting place remains unknown. Michael Romano remains in state prison. He has filed multiple appeals, all of which have been denied. Emma Romano, now in her 30s, works as a victim advocate, helping others navigate the criminal justice system. She has spoken publicly about her experience, about the weight of silence, about the courage it took to finally tell the truth. Lucas, younger when it all happened, has remained more private, but those who know him say he has found peace. Closing. The case of Patricia Romano reminds us that justice, though sometimes slow, can still arrive. That the truth, even when buried beneath years of silence and fear, can surface. That those who loved Trish never stopped believing that the questions surrounding her disappearance deserved answers. Clears throat. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.